60, The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. So President Trump has dispatched his envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, to engage the mullahs in Tehran about nukes and see if a deal can't be worked out that would ensure that the Iranians do not develop nuclear weapons. Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, on with Maria Bartiromo yesterday, had this to say about the prospects for preventing a nuclear Iran and what the administration is willing to do. Not specifically, but he sort of intimated what they might be willing to do if negotiations fail.
President Trump is dead serious on this issue. He's dead serious that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. He's said that for 20 years. He's been consistent. That is clear. He's dead serious that he wants it done at the negotiating table. He wants it done peacefully. Yeah. And that's why he's going straight to these talks. He set that deadline. These were productive talks yesterday. I don't want to get ahead of our skis. Steve Witkoff does a fantastic job, but it was a good step, and they're gonna go at it again on Saturday. But he's also dead serious that if we can't figure this out at the negotiating table, then there are other options, to include my department, to ensure that Iran never has a nuclear bomb. We hope we never get there. We really do, Maria. But what we're doing with the Houthis and what we're doing in the region, we've shown a capability to go far, to go deep, and to go big. And again, we don't want to do that. But if we have to, we will, to prevent the nuclear bomb in Iran's hand.
So we're willing to bomb Iran? I mean, I don't know how else you can interpret that, particularly when he makes the comparison to the Houthis, which is a comparison potentially in tactics, but not implications. Anyway, let's get Steve Bucci's temperature on what Secretary of Defense Hegseth had to say. Steve Bucci has served America for 3 decades as Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official, now a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen, thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me back on the show.
So we're going to light up Tehran if needed?
It sounds like that is not off the table, which I think it probably was off the table with the last administration. And, you know, the Trump administration, for guys who say that, hey, we don't want war, we just want everybody to get along and make a deal, I think President Trump recognizes if you don't at least acknowledge that that other option is there, that it's the negotiating part is not as effective. And so, yeah, I think President Trump's serious. He recognizes that if Iran gets a nuclear weapon that it can put on a missile and deliver, that's an existential threat, at least to Israel, to other interests we have in the Middle East region, and even into Europe, because they do have missiles that can go that far, and potentially to America. So he's not going to let it happen. And I think he's probably in lockstep with Netanyahu on that once they get that device or get so close to it that we can't deal with it, we're going to deal with it. And that's, I think, probably the right course of action.
Right. I mean, it seems to me, you know, this is another opportunity for an interesting international coalition to be built to isolate Iran, or maybe isolate Iran, Russia, and China. But, you know, it requires U.S. leadership, just like trying to bring an end to the cessation of hostilities in Eastern Europe requires U.S. leadership. The pieces are there, but you have to have somebody lead, because you're not going to get leadership from the Arab League, and you're not going to get leadership from the European nations. So, you have to have someone like Trump put them together. And this is what you can do with Iran. Obviously, the Saudis don't want Iran to be nuclear in addition to Israel. So you can put some Arab countries in this part of this coalition, plus the Europeans, as you mentioned. And then it becomes something where you're sort of applying international pressure, and it becomes a lot more difficult for those internationalist establishment types to be critical.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And, President Trump is willing to lead. He doesn't want to do this stuff. He'd rather make a deal. That's more beneficial to everybody. But he's also not afraid to say that when push comes to shove, that might be what he has to do.
I wanted to get your take on Bucci meeting with Trump at the White House today. And look, I understand that, dealing with despots from around the globe is, well, you're dealing with despots. It's not the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. And so you use them in the interests, in America's interests. And so you want to deport Tren de Aragua gangbangers to El Salvador to serve out their time in El Salvador before they're shipped back to Venezuela or whatever happened to them. That's fine by me. But let's not hail Bucci as some great small L liberal in the hemisphere. Mary Anastasio Grady has a devastating piece on Bucci in the Wall Street Journal, and really comparing El Salvador to Guatemala in terms of trade sanctions as well. But just noting that Bucci plays both sides. I mean, he's welcomes Xi. He's part of the Chinese Communist Party's Belt and Road Initiative. They're building a soccer stadium. They've built other stuff as gifts to El Salvador. So there's Chinese, when I talk about Chinese influence in the Panama Canal, I mean, I know it's more important than El Salvador, frankly, but it's there in El Salvador. There's all sorts of evidence of it. He also, frankly, suborned smugglers and other ne'er-do-wells into this country during the open borders period of the Biden administration. And his own record in his country is not something we would tolerate in this country. So I just, some context here with people like Bucci before he, goes to a UFC fight with Trump, and we're supposed to treat him as like a great ally of America. Let's understand what he is and what his limited use is.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. We, every government, every administration of every flavor that we've had has worked with people that a lot of folks didn't like, and said, hey, I'm not going to talk to these guys because they're beyond the pale of a line that administration writes. President Trump, I think, is, in the utilitarian end of things. If he can make a deal with somebody that he feels is beneficial to the United States of America, then he's more than willing to do that. But I'm with you. There are some folks, you might have to deal with them because they're a head of state in some country, but you don't necessarily have to kiss them on the lips and, embrace them like a brother. You can at least, have some distance that maintains, some decorum when somebody is, look, as a historical example, right? Churchill and Roosevelt decided, hey, we got to deal with Stalin because he's going to help us beat Hitler. And then they had to deal with the repercussions of having dealt with him. And we ended up having to do that for 50 years. So that's an historical example. It's not necessarily an endorsement of the policy because it can work out differently than you hope. Bucci's not Stalin. But he's kind of a thug, and you know what? Sometimes we work with thugs. Let's not try and put lipstick on the pig, though, and say he's not a thug, that he's, as you say, some sort of inspired liberal. He's not.
Staying in the hemisphere, the importance of what Hegseth announced last week while in Panama about trying to eradicate Chinese influence over the operation of the canal in conjunction with the Panamanians taking the lead?
Well, it's hugely important. We need to do that. Having China have essential control over the entrance and exit on both ends of the canal is unacceptable to us, because they can take actions at some point to at least hinder, if not stop us from using that canal when we need to in a national security arena. You know, it goes way beyond the fact that it's like really cheaper if we go through there as opposed to sailing all the way around South America again. But we've got to do it in a way that, you know, doesn't look imperialistic. And I think we're trying to do that by putting pressure on the Panamanians to get them to kick the Chinese out. But we need to do it. And again, we don't want to go to war with China. That's not profitable for anybody. But we also have to protect our national security interests. And the fact that we allowed Carter gave the darn thing away after we bought it from the French. I mean, we didn't steal it from the Panamanians, but he decided to give it back. And then over the years, everybody just, took this sort of laissez-faire attitude and let the Panamanians subcontract to the Chinese. We've got to fix that.
I wanted to get your take, too, on the newly released documents associated with the Russian collusion hoax. There's some new information there that sort of confirms what we knew to have occurred, which is a hoax that was instigated by the Democrat Party and Hillary Clinton and propagated by the intelligence community. But I mean, some of the details are important, particularly when you have high-level individuals like then NSA Director Mike Rogers shooting down what became a Pulitzer Prize, of course, award-winning Washington Post article about the Russian collusion investigation. Shot it down, given a Pulitzer Prize, given legitimacy, not legitimate. And others within the intelligence community that expressed great skepticism about the reliability of the Steele dossier, skepticism about some of these FBI informants like Stephen Halper, who was paid nearly $1.2 million over 30 years. And the Bureau continued to lean on him, even though he told an inaccurate story about future short-lived NSA Mike Flynn. I mean, just all this stuff that, again, sort of indicts the intelligence community as either feckless or complicit. And you're talking about, the key alphabet soup agencies. You're talking about FBI, CIA, NSA, the DNI. I mean, where do you think we are, even with Trump personnel there at the top, with respect to the constitution of the intelligence community now some 7 or 8 years removed from this ignominious period?
Well, I think obviously the people who were the screwballs in the intel community writ large, were the leadership. It wasn't necessarily the rank and file guys, though. They get utilized by these other people when that's going on. So if the Trump administration can get rid of more of the upper mid-level and upper level folks that have burrowed in, that were originally politicals and have burrowed into those organizations now in our system, so that they're now professionals. I'm doing air quotes here on the radio. And, the kind of people we saw actually involved directly in the collusion hoax and then the laptop hoax, all that stuff. If we can get rid of those upper level folks and give the Trump people a chance to work with the real professionals down at the ground level, I don't think we need to eliminate any of those organizations, but they do need to be cleaned up. We can't just assume, like Director Wray, when he got nominated by Trump, Trump bought the recommendation. No, this guy's a professional. He's not involved in any of this junk that went on with the campaign. He's the man to clean it up. And he turned out to be the biggest cover for all of the political operations that anybody. I mean, he was almost as bad as Comey.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Yeah.
And defended the organization over the interests of the country and definitely over the man that had been elected to be president. We can't allow that to happen again, and that's going to be a difficult surgery. You don't just want to lop off arms necessarily, but, man, maybe the top of the head should go.
Trump suggested as well there may be good news to report about the peace process, to the extent there is one, in Eastern Europe. Are you hearing anything of particular interest that real progress is being made on a deal between Russia and Ukraine?
I have not heard anything particularly positive. I mean, just looking at it, the two sides are still hammering each other. Putin blowing up a church service on Palm Sunday. Not a good look for someone who's supposedly trying to fix things. Yeah. And then you had Zelensky go on 60 Minutes last night.
He invited Trump for a visit, and Trump's not going to go there. There's no way.
No, and just, to be honest with you, going on 60 Minutes, this was an extension of him raising the issues when the reporters were still in the room when he came to the White House. And that didn't work out very well for him. Mm-hmm. He embarrassed the president. He set off the vice president. This is not the way you do business with somebody like Trump. If you are in the position of weakness, you're not going to influence him that way. You're just going to totally kick him off. And doing that, I imagine in this morning's discussions, there's probably a lot of discussion about that, and not a lot of good discussion.
Yes. The lure of Leslie Stahl or whoever. I mean, another Cosmo cover in the offing for Zelensky. Yeah.
It was a bad move.
Yeah, and he looked desperate too, with the way he was asking it, and he's like a sign of desperation. Hey, quickly before we let you go, I wanted to ask you about the border. I mean, Trump authorizing military action. I don't know if you saw it. It was quite a force. You see, Latrobe helicopters, Black Hawk helicopters, Chinooks coming down, descending on the border. They, it was well orchestrated. They were putting up barbed wire where there were holes in the fences. What's the end game there? Because if you look at what, last March under Biden, 189,000 came in 1 month. This year, 7,000. But still, that's still 7,000 illegals.
Yeah, it's not sealed yet. It's a lot better than it was under Biden, for sure. I mean, like, orders of magnitude better, but there's still more work to be done. And I think you're seeing the president and the SecDef using the logistical capabilities of the military and the ability to have them, they don't have to sit around and have a discussion before something happens. They get an order, they move out, and they do it. And in this case, they can fix some of that infrastructure problem that is the most difficult thing to manage with something as big as our southwest border, and get that fixed, and then continue with the operational things that the law enforcement folks are doing. I think that's a good mix, and it's an appropriate use of military assets.
Stephen Bucci served America for 3 decades as an Army Special Forces officer and top Pentagon official, now a visiting fellow in the Heritage Foundation's Allison Center for Foreign Policy Studies. Stephen Bucci, thank you as always.
It's my pleasure. We'll talk to you guys next week.
Yep, thank you. Have a good week. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Virago is fending off viruses and making America healthy again.
Hi, my name is Dr. Michael Huber. I'm one of the co-founders of Virago, the immune enhancement cocktail. Virago contains 23 natural ingredients that work synergistically to boost your immune system. Virago's natural ingredients also protect your heart, your brain, and your liver through its anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. Virago also promotes healthy gum health. So go to myvirago.com